Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the New Yankee Workshop. Has anyone ever said to you, no more lolling around, we've got work to do? Well, it's an antique word that means relax, loaf, chill out. Furniture makers use it to refer to a type of chair, a lolling chair. And it goes way back. In fact, some people think that maybe our founding fathers read the Declaration of Independence in the comfort of a lolling chair. So we're going to build one today, right here in the New Yankee Workshop. Aaron Brokaw, Bridgetown, Maine?
No, that's New Jersey.
Ah. Well, today we are at world headquarters of Gary Sullivan, an old friend and an antiques dealer. And you also specialize in these early American clocks.
I do.
They are beautiful. Now, what about this little one over here?
This is called a dwarf clock. It was made in Hingham, Massachusetts, about 1820.
Nice. Well, I digress as usual. We're not here to look at clocks. You brought out some lolling chairs for us.
I did. I brought three. This is the earliest example. It was made in Newport, Rhode Island, about 1760 or 1770. It has these Chippendale legs with stop fluting. And open arms. This would be called an open arm chair.
And the arms are upholstered.
That's right. That's right.
Seems a little upright.
It is. It's a version of what was being made in England at this time. If we move to this chair, which is a little bit later, the back cants backward a little bit further, be a little bit more comfortable. This chair was made about 1790. It has a molded leg that tapers at the bottom, so it's got a bit of a Hepplewhite influence.
And no upholstery on the arms.
Right. This is a classic American form without the upholstery on the arms. This would be called a lolling chair or a Martha Washington chair.
Ah, Martha Washington. We actually built her candle stand.
Right.
And how about this one? There's hardly any upholstery left on it.
Well, this is the latest chair that I brought today. This one was made about 1810. This is a classic Hepplewhite style. It has this inlaid satin wood on the arm supports and on the legs.
Now, how about values on these?
Well, the earliest chair would be the most valuable. This chair is from the Goddard Townsend School of Cabinet Makers in Newport, Rhode Island. It's a very rare example. It could very well be in a museum, and this is about a $40,000 chair.
Wow.
The next most valuable chair would be the Hepplewhite example. Because the inlay is so rare, you don't see this very often. This would be about a $20,000 chair.
Even as it sits?
Yes, all it needs is a little upholstery.
And how about this one?
This is a more common example. We see chairs of this type much more frequently. This is about a $10,000 chair.
Can I sit in it?
Be my guest.
Well, it is pretty comfortable.
It's for sale. Did you bring your
Really?
checkbook?
Well, I can at least look, right? Now, you see hundreds of these chairs. How do they hold up? Where do they fail?
Well, the arms and arm supports are prone to failure. They have a very small mortise and tenon joint here, and if they're not treated well, they can fail there. Also at the bottom, there's a mortise and tenon joint between the arm support and the side rail, and that can fail if you lean on it too hard.
Right, and these curved pieces, if the grain isn't just right, sometimes that can split.
That's true. That's true. And at the back here, again, if you lean on it too hard, the joint can fail there.
Right. Well, chairs are always a challenge, but I'd like to try making one of these. You mind if I take a few photos?
Go right ahead.
All right. Well, here are the woodworking elements of that lolling chair that Gary showed us. Tomorrow we'll do the upholstery. All the parts that are going to show are made out of mahogany. It's a beautiful wood to work with. It shapes nicely and it sands beautifully. The secondary wood is poplar, which is very strong, so it'll make a good frame. If you want to build your own version of a lolling chair, a measure drawing will be available with the materials list, and you'll hear more about that before the program ends. I want to start today with these back legs. It's a fairly complex piece. So over here I have a couple pieces of mahogany for the legs. I want to cut both of them at the same time. So I've applied some double stick tape. This is just a release paper. There's actually a clear tape underneath it. It's very sticky. And I can just bring the two parts together, nice and flush along this back edge. Now on the top piece I've already laid out the shape of the leg using my template. And this is very important because not only is it the shape, but it also shows me the location of the mortises for the stretcher and the rails. Now I can cut these over at the bandsaw. Before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now to start, I'm only going to cut the flat surfaces on the inside of the leg. I'm going to leave the curve for later, and I'm going to stay just outside of that line. To smooth up the cuts from the bandsaw, I could use a handheld belt sander or hand tools, but we're lucky. We have one of these, an edge sander, and it does a beautiful job. Well, now I'm ready to start making some mortises. And the first two that I want to make in the back legs for the side rails, I can't do at my benchtop mortise because the wood is too tall. So I'll use a router with a guide fence and a 3/8 inch bit. I've separated the two legs, and now I can turn to my benchtop mortiser to make mortises for the back rail. With a little work on the bandsaw and some drum sanding, I can form the back edge of the leg. For the last several minutes, I've been working on the front legs. I've made the mortises to receive the upper rails. They may look simple, but they're actually fairly complex. If I put a square against the leg, you can see it pitches back, and the rail is level. So that means I have to make an angle cut here at the top. That's going to be 91 degrees, and this back corner over here will be 91 degrees so that they're parallel to each other. The rail has a square cut, so I need a 90-degree cut here. 90 degrees from the top is a back cut. The back and sides of the leg are tapered. We'll do those at the sander. These 1/4 inch mortises are needed in all the legs to receive the stretchers. Now I'm going to start working on the seat rails made out of poplar. The front piece has its ends cut square as well as the back rail, but because the chair flares out towards the front, the side rails have to be cut at 7 degrees. Now I'm ready to start forming tenons on those rails. I have my miter gauge, a stop block, and what I'm going to do is nibble away the top and bottom of each tenon. The ends of the side rails are cut at an angle, so to remove that material, I have to change my miter gauge so that it fits tightly to this stop block. These are the first shoulder cuts. I'll do the square rails first. Now I'm tilting the saw to 7 degrees to make the shoulder cuts on the side rails. Now I've set up my tenoning jig to simplify the cheek cuts. Well, I have to take a break now and put some finish on our prototype chair because the upholsterers are coming to upholster it. Now, the mahogany is a beautiful wood, and we're not going to stain it. We're just going to seal it up. I'm going to seal it with a satin lacquer. A couple coats will do the job, and it'll let the wood darken naturally. Now, I've clamped together all the parts that we've made so far. I've clamped the stretcher to the leg. I've set it up on these spacer blocks so it's the right height. Now I want to very carefully mark where it meets the leg. I connected the top and bottom mark together. Now I'm taking a piece of 5/8 stock, putting it on the line and extending each piece to account for some tenons. I'm going to form the tenons on the stretchers using my dado, which I've tipped to 5 degrees, along with my miter gauge. With the dado back to 90 degrees, I can cut square tenons for the stretcher that connects the back legs. Now I can use the same setup. The blade is a little higher to cut the top and bottom of each tenon. Here I'm using a handsaw, having it set against the shoulder cut to cut to a layout line. And I'll finish these off at the bandsaw. Now this little stopped dovetail slot is going to receive a stretcher that goes from stretcher to stretcher at the front of the chair. Now to do the corresponding dovetail in the other stretcher, I have to come from the other side. Okay, there's the other one. To accurately mark for the dovetail, I've clamped the cross stretcher in place. I'm just using a utility knife to outline the shape. Here I've clamped the stretcher to the bench, and on top I have a block that's cut at a 5-degree bevel, the same as the side stretchers, and that's going to help guide my saw as I make the shoulder cuts. It's so little to remove, it's much easier to do it with hand tools. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. Well, it's starting, but it seems a little bit tight, so I'll have to do a little bit of fine tuning. After I get that done, I'm going to round over the top edges of the stretchers before I leave. Well, good morning. I had a good night last night. I completed rounding over the top edges of the stretchers using a router bit at the router table, and I fabricated the parts for the back using the same techniques you've seen me use on other parts. Mortises cut at the mortiser, tenons formed on the table saw, and for the crest rail, I cut out the shape on my bandsaw, smooth it on the spindle sander, and then I just use the router to knock off the edges. Now I'm ready to glue it up. You'll notice I'm using poplar here because this is going to be all covered. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and there's a couple more things I want to do to the seat frame. That backrest goes against the leg, against this slope, and when you lean back on the chair, it puts a lot of pressure on it. Now what the antique had was a notch right here in the side rail. That stop adds a lot of strength and will prevent it from popping out. So I'm going to notch that out, and I'm also going to drill a couple holes in each rail for some dowels to connect the lower arm. Here's the setup. I've set the miter gauge to match this angle, which is 7 degrees. Now I'm just going to nibble away the material. A doweling jig for drilling the holes for the dowels makes them very accurate. Well, now I'm starting the glue up of the seat assembly. So first I'm going to do the back legs. Now here's the front leg assembly. Stretchers are installed next. And here's the front legs. Well, we'll let this cook for a while and start working on the arm assembly. I made some patterns for each piece. This is the lower part of the arm, which sets down on the rail in the front leg. And this is the armrest itself, and that sits on top and connects to the back. Using the patterns, I've laid out some mahogany pieces. Now I'm going to cut them on the bandsaw and sand the edges smooth. Well, take a look at this intersection right here. I made a notch for this back piece. I don't want just the point bearing there, so I'm going to trim off a little bit so I get a square corner. Doesn't take much. For the last few minutes, I've been forming a tenon on the top of the front leg. That's going to tie into the lower arm, which means I'm going to need a mortise. Here I've attached my doweling jig to the lower arm. The holes I'm making will align with the ones I drilled earlier. Here I've put in a couple temporary dowels, I'm not gluing them yet, so that I can hold this lower arm as I move on to the next step. Now here I've cut a piece of plywood the same thickness as the arm. I have a mark at the back that I'm going to set it on, and a mark on the front. So this would be considered the top of the arm, and I just want to lay out the angles. Here's the setup for making that notch. I'm using my miter gauge, set at the right angle, and I've tipped the blade slightly. I'm going to nibble away the material. I've just made a pocket for a pocket screw which will attach the arm later. I have to form another tenon on the top of that lower arm, so I'm just going to nibble away the material. I've cut the tenon to the length that I need. Now I'll just finish it up with some hand tools. Here I'm beginning to make some cuts to form a notch which will fit into the back. Well, now with the arm in position, I can set it over the tenon, mark the outline so I can make a mortise. All right, that's beginning to fit pretty well. Now I can mark the taper for the lower arm. Most of the taper takes place on the inside. I'll just put a pencil mark there and sand most of it off. Now I'll just round over this back edge using a router and some hand tools. Now that fits pretty well, but look at this. The top edge of the arm hits that corner perfectly. But down here it's sticking out about 1/4 inch. So I want to taper it and then bring it back to square. Well, that fits pretty well. And that's how we make the arm for the chair. Of course, I have one more to do. After I finish that one, I'll glue and clamp everything together. When the glue dries, I'll sand everything flush, put on a coat of finish, and then we'll be ready for some upholstery. Well, what do you think of this? Serial number 1, our first upholstered lolling chair. And I gotta say, it is very comfortable. Now, we have 2 master upholsterers here, Kendrick Starnes and Bobby Gant. They're from Lee Industries all the way up from Hickory, North Carolina. Now, yesterday you guys upholstered this chair,
Right.
and we went out last night and had some good old New England lobster.
Sure did.
Got you nice and full. You ready for another day?
Yes, sir.
We're ready.
You think you can teach me how to upholster this?
I think so.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now over here we have the second frame that we finished up,
Right.
and you got to start on it.
First we put this polypropylene webbing on here. We stretch it real tight with stretchers. This replaces the old jute, which the jute would deteriorate. This does not deteriorate like the jute did.
Right.
So it's a lot better product.
The jute are the straps that we see on the old antiques.
Yes, sir.
And they do
Right.
sort of fall apart with time.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Now, we've used this once before on our
We
bench
have
project.
another polypropylene webbing that we'll use. We'll tack in place and stretch tight to give a good foundation for the back poly.
All right, you ready to staple that on?
We're ready.
All right.
We'll start by just folding the edges over and tacking it down. All right, Norm, how about pulling that tight for me down there?
Here, this is one of your upholstery tools. We've used these before. Clamps onto the fabric, and I can really get some leverage on it. Now this is interesting. Kendrick and Bobby have been working on the seat suspension with some more webbing. Now this stuff stretches. What is it?
It's just rubberized webbing, Norm.
You've run pieces front to back, and now you're weaving it across the chair. How tight are you actually pulling it?
We're going to pull it as tight as we can, Norm.
Wow, you really want to stretch that out. So that gives us the seat suspension. In an antique, we might see coil springs. This replaces it.
It sure does. It creates a nice seating system.
Great. All right, now what's this material?
This is 100% polypropylene.
And what does this do for you?
It's just a substrate to keep the cotton from migrating through the rubber webbing.
All right. What's this?
It's a low melt polyester fiber which softens the wood around the edge to support the fabric.
Okay. Now here you've piled up some cotton batting. Actually, it's not cotton, it's a synthetic material, right? And it'll hold its shape?
It sure will. It gives the seat some shape and it'll hold up for years.
Oh, what's this? Looks like a big foam sponge.
Close, Norm.
Now you've notched it so it fits around the arms. Oh, now that seat is really starting to take shape.
I'm ready for some more cotton, Kendrick.
Yes, sir.
All right, I've seen you do this before. We've put the batting over the foam. And as quick as that, we're ready for the first piece of fabric.
Right.
Now, how much fabric does this chair actually take?
About 3.5 yards.
It's not too bad. Now, as I remember, these first staples are not permanent. You may have to pull them out and readjust the fabric later.
That's right, Norm.
Well, now for the tricky part, the cutting. You don't want to make a mistake here.
No, you don't, Norm. You just want to cut right inside the rails coming down.
Right, because you got to bring that through.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've pulled it through, and you have to stretch it a bit.
Yes, we pull it tight and base it.
Now, getting around that leg, that's going to be a critical cut.
It sure is, Norm. We're going to cut right to the back side of the arm stump.
So you just tuck it in there.
Yeah, we'll just tuck it in. No staples required in this area.
And a few decorative tacks to finish it off.
Exactly.
And some more cotton here on the back.
Exactly, Norm.
Okay, and here you have more foam for the back. It's a little bit thinner.
Yeah, this is 1-inch polyurethane foam, Norm.
How am I doing?
Doing good, Norm.
So you secure the back fabric up at the top here first.
Yes, so we can pull it down to get the slack out at the bottom.
Okay. Now, Bobby, it looks like I could get in trouble trying to do this corner here. Let me
It's not that hard, Norm. You just tuck it under, roll it, and pull it back on an angle. And tack.
So now there is going to be a back piece, but I want to make sure this corner looks really good.
Right, you just want to put a pleat right on the corner.
Right there, you think?
Got like that. That looks good, Norm.
Get that tucked tight in the corner. Pull it down like that.
Yeah, it looks good, Norm.
It's a good job, Norm.
So now we're working on the back of the chair, and you've just tacked a thin strip of the fabric. And what are you doing there?
We're just wrapping it over a welt cord
Right.
to give it a nice trim detail around the out back.
Makes a nice little bead. What's the cardboard for?
It gives us a nice square edge for the welt to go up against.
So now you've got a metal strip.
Right, this is ply grip. It acts as a anchor for the out back.
So it's sort of like a tack strip for a carpet.
Exactly, Norm.
Now you've bent the tabs over a little bit and you're applying another tape. Looks like a foam tape.
Exactly, Norm. It's a self-adhesive foam tape to protect the fabric.
Oh, you want to keep the fabric away from the metal.
Next, the low melt fiber to protect the out back fabric.
Okay, so this is the outback fabric.
Exactly, Norm.
Have anything to do with the Australian outback?
Not a thing.
All right, I'm right on your center mark.
Okay, we'll base tack it in place.
What's that, an ice pick that you're using?
Sure is, Norm.
So that's a great tool for tucking it in that narrow little slot.
Yeah, it works great.
You're not leaving much surplus on this one.
Sure aren't, Norm. We're going to tuck that in and knock it down.
So you just drive it down and the barbs on that piece will grab the fabric and it's tucked in nice and tight to that welt cord. Looks great.
Norm, we use this fabric to cover the bottom.
So I just fold it over and staple it on.
That's right. No one's going to see this.
So how'd we do, boys?
Did great.
Well, they sure look great. How do they sit?
Try one out, Norm.
Right. Oh, that's nice.
Yes, it's great.
Now, it took us a couple hours with your help to get this chair done. How long would it take one of your top-notch upholsterers?
You really want to know that?
I do.
About 45 minutes.
Wow, I guess I got a long way to go, huh? Well, I really want to thank you guys for coming all the way up here and helping us with yet another project.
All right, since you like them so good, how about some more lobster?
Nice try, Bobby. Well, next time we have a real treat for you. We're going to take you back about 200 years where there were taverns all over New England for weary patriots to take a break. Now, in those taverns, they needed furniture, so you might find a table like this one, known as a tap table. A guest could come in, sit down, and enjoy a tankard of cider. Now, this table may look old, but I only built it a couple days ago. The secret is in the finish. The tap table revealed next time, right here in the new Yankee Workshop.